James Summers Morning Blend. Today I have with me Rick Oleshak with AB Morning. Good morning, Rick. How are you?
JT, how you doing? Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, good seeing you, man. It's been a minute, man. Definitely been a minute.
Maybe a couple minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of minutes. Rick, I've been doing a series within my show sponsored by Midwest Bank Center, talking about the economic impact and inclusion of the African American community in St. Louis. But today we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the impact of the Cortex and other areas as far as what's happening in St. Louis. But before we get started, just a little bit of your background. How long have you been in St. Louis?
Well, first of all, you said you're sponsored by the Midwest Bank Center. I'm sponsored by AB Mauri today, right?
Yes.
So I'll give you one sponsor for another. But no, my background, James, I've been in St. Louis since 2000, and I didn't come here for baking. If you don't know much about AB Mauri, we're a manufacturer of Fleischmann's yeast and other bakery ingredients, which were really, really hot commodities at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. But so I've been with the company about 8 years, VP of marketing for AB Mauri North America. Have a global role as well because we also make yeast that goes into some other good things like beer and wine and distilled spirits and all that kind of good stuff. I hope you know. Nothing in my hands, no beer mugs here, but it's an interesting job. So I've got a global piece that I work on some of those other parts of the business. But I came here to St. Louis in 2000 to work for Anheuser-Busch and spent about 6 years with them, 6 years on the PR side, and then I spent my next 7 years with Anheuser-Busch on the marketing side, the brand marketing side. So I finished up my career there in 2013 as the director of Stella Artois. So if there's any, chalice drinkers out there, I salute you. So thank you for your support. But yeah, it was a great opportunity. The old Anheuser-Busch through 2008 and the new AB InBev through 2013. But then if you want to go back, we're gonna go a little flashback too,
Okay.
because it's kind of fun. My background before that had nothing to do with food, had nothing to do with beer. It was NASCAR. So I was automotive racing. I was PR for the governing body. And so it was based in Daytona Beach, Florida, where the headquarters, the home of speed, right? On the beach. And then prior to that, I spent time with the Orlando Magic. So I had more of a sports background. So these are the days, 95 to 98, Shaquille O'Neal, Penny Hardaway. There's no championship ring here, right?
Right.
Couldn't beat Michael Jordan. He's the real GOAT. But yeah, so sports to beer to baking, and that's how we get to this conversation today, buddy.
Wow, you've been doing a lot. I didn't know that. That's interesting background you have.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
For sure.
So AB Mauri is right there in the heart of the Cortex. You're right there at 4240.
4240 Duncan.
Duncan, yeah. You got Microsoft in there. What used to be, I can't even think of the name. It's called IFF now.
Yeah, you're talking about DuPont. That's
DuPont
across
used to be DuPont now, yeah. Right? IFF. You had WashU. You got BioSTL right there. You got a lot of new construction happening. So just from your observation, what do you think is the economic impact of the Cortex in this area?
Well, let me say this. I mean, there's a lot of intangibles about being in this area. Some things that maybe you can quantify, maybe other things you can't quantify. But I'll tell you, as a business, AB Mauri North America, we were based out in Chesterfield in kind of a nameless office park. And it was fine. It was okay for our business. But we moved here in the beginning of 2015 because we wanted to be in the heart of an innovation community. And we thought it was important. We moved from there with 55 corporate employees. Again, we've got plants that make yeast and other bakery ingredients across the U.S. and Canada. But for our headquarters, we had 55 employees. We moved here. Now we're, pressing 90, and we have more space. We're in an area that you mentioned some of the companies, right? We had Square App here as our neighbor for a while, and the Boeings and General Dynamics, and they're right down the hall. So it's interesting being a community where people are trying to expand their horizons as a business and as their people, to keep people inspired, looking at new ideas, fresh ideas. And then just Cortex, you could be your own person, just trying to hang a shingle on on the side of a building and start your own business, and you can do that in Cortex. So you just don't know who you're going to come across. But we wanted to be inspired, and that's why we moved to Cortex back in 2015. It's been great. We've already expanded once. We've got 33,000 square feet now. We've got a baking hub, which is really a pilot bakery. So we can bring in commercial bakers, and they can spend a couple of days with us working on different products they're going to launch to consumers, and they can get more out of 2 or 3 days with us than what they could do 2 or 3 months back home, because we'll get caught up in other things. Here they can actually test it, bake it. Hey, it's not right. I'm going to go back. Let's bake it again. Let's change the formulation. Let's work on the application. And here we go. But, you talked about the investment value. It's, there's a lot that you can't define, but then, the total package so far after more than 15 years, I think Cortex started almost 20 years ago now. Well, next year. They've said the impact has been maybe a $500 million investment, almost 4,000 jobs created. There's more than 350 companies in this area. It's a cool space, right? You've got IKEA, you've got breweries, you've got the Metrolink station, you've got really what it was really designed for is be near the universities. You got Wash U and all the hospitals on one end, you got SLU, St. Louis University on the other. So why not be right in the thick of it? So I think there's a lot of value for being here.
What do you think about the startup community and what's been happening there? Because you and I actually met at Venture Cafe right there in the Cortex, which is part of the startup community.
Absolutely. Well, we're not a startup company, right? We're part of a larger international player called Associated British Foods, and they have many divisions that are in food, grocery, agriculture, and some others, including retail clothing of all things. But so we've got an interesting part of the business. But you know what? We are kind of a startup because back in 2017 we had an offshoot of AB Mauri called AB Biotech that started here in North America, and we were doing some of these businesses. I mentioned, yeast for beer, wine, and spirits, and animal nutrition, human nutrition, bioethanol, those sorts of businesses. And that's what biotech does. It goes into these other areas outside of baking where maybe yeast and enzymes can play a role to improving the products we all kind of, use and love. So I think we do have a little bit of startup mentality that way. And I think St. Louis has a great reputation. It goes back, I went back and researched because I'm not smart enough to know this from the top of my head, but I went back 2015, Popular Mechanics listed St. Louis as the #1 startup community in the country. And that's a big wow, because at the time, right, everybody always thinks San Francisco, you got to be in that 7 mile by 7 mile space, or you got to be up in Seattle where some of the tech players are. And they're like, no, we like St. Louis because there's great arch grants funding. It's a lower cost of living, right? You don't have to put a mortgage on your mortgage just to live in a community. Great neighborhoods, really unique neighborhoods, all these small little towns all bundled in one. Good political support, great restaurants. We know in St. Louis we like to eat, right? It's not just barbecue. It's not just barbecue, right? We know how to eat and we know how to drink. So, and then, just all the revitalization that's come along with it. I think this is the right space. And startup, boy, why wouldn't you start in St. Louis? Plus, it's easy to get to. It's in the middle of the country.
It is. Speaking of innovation and all the new construction that's going on, what do you think the impact of the new foundry and the up and coming soccer stadium we're going to have on St. Louis?
All right, well, let's tackle the foundry first. I've been a couple times, so I can give you a little bit of my perspective. I thought it was cool. There's always new options when people like to go explore new places to eat or to grab a beverage or to hang out, and that's what it is. I went back and I researched a little bit of the building because I just didn't know the history, but it was this Century Electric space dating back to almost 1900. They built like motors and generators. It was at the time, like the early 1900s, it was the #3 manufacturer in St. Louis was in that space. And now it's, what is it? It's crazy. Now you've got restaurants, you got retail shops. They've spent $220 million getting this initial phasing, with maybe more than $100 million still to go to get apartments and housing and other office space. So I think it's cool. It was a dormant space for 10 plus years, and now you got activity, right? Yeah. It was a little bit of a blight, and now people, it's the cool hip place to go, right? And a lot of this stuff, you got to give hats off to our Swedish friends, because IKEA helped generate the interest. And
Yes.
like they say in other markets, where IKEA goes, so does everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's kind of proven itself.
Yeah.
So that's the value. So you want to talk soccer?
Yes, let's talk soccer.
All right, let's kick it, brother. So I'm excited. I mean, we all know that we lost the Rams a few years ago, but we just gained a big settlement, so that's exciting. As a Battle Hawks season ticket holder before they went away, I was excited about kind of this startup sports mentality, right? The Cardinals, the Blues have great bases. All right, how are we going to do with professional soccer? And what is it, a $500 million project? All right, let's start doing. I'm going to throw the numbers at you. You can flash them on the screen, whatever you got to do, JT. What is it? More than 22,000 seat stadium, which is pretty cool. I've gone past it a few times. It's incredible. 17 home games for Major League Soccer. So now you're talking 375,000 fans on an annual basis. All right, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Some people are coming from out of town, right? They might be coming from the other parts of Missouri or coming from Illinois. 175 new jobs. But then you start saying, all right, you got a cool building. No, there's more, because you got a training center, you got 3 practice fields, you got a headquarters, you got to house all these people that are going to work there. You got a fan pavilion, all the retail that comes. Mm-hmm. Look at what Union Station recently did with the Ferris wheel and all the retail shops. So, kudos to that. Now you've got a place for people to go. There's already some bars and restaurants, some that have been pre-existing, and I tell you what, they're going to blow up. They're really going to do well. So I think it's cool. I like to say, hey, new news is good, but when you have good news too, I think it's impactful, and it's all good for St. Louis. All these things we've talked about.
Speaking of good things for St. Louis, that's the last question I want to ask you. What do you think is the future of St. Louis?
Wow. Well, I think all these things, incrementally add up to something that is special, right? I mean, there's enough negative news about any kind of market, right? Whether you're going to other markets in the Midwest, we've got good neighbors to our north, but they all fight a lot of the same issues, and you fight some of this hangover of maybe just negative news that tends to be out there. And I think what's happening is you're following all these good stories, and you keep adding them and adding them. And when people come here, we use the term "meet me in St. Louis," right? I mean, there's a famous movie, but when people do come here, they're kind of blown away by the culture, the kindness of the people here, the things you can do here, and not like blow your paycheck. You know what I mean? It's not as expensive as going to the West Coast or the East Coast. It's easy to get here. Now you get on a flight from either coast, and you can be here in 3 to 4 hours versus 6 hours going coast to coast. So I think we got a lot of good things going for ourselves. I think the future's bright. And all these things are just good kind of stepping stones to kind of get us in that city that we all kind of imagine.
Rick, I'm going to talk to Deshari Jones and to Sam Page and nominate you for ambassador for the city of St. Louis.
I appreciate that, James, but I don't know.
Because you're rolling out, that tongue is just going, man, and you're just rolling out stuff about St. Louis. And I'm sitting there going, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Well, you know what? And information is king, right? But you kind of do your little searches and stuff like that. We've got really cool stories. I mean, that's part of our job too. James, you're a storyteller, and my role as a marketer is to inspire people, right? Not only with our own company, but also our customers and people that we get a chance to work with. And I think that's what's special is we all have stories, right? And
yes.
Boy, if you didn't have it, this world would be a little boring, don't you think?
Yeah.
But St. Louis is not boring. You look at the history, and I don't think the best days of St. Louis are past us, right? I think there's great opportunities for the future. And all these things that you kind of mixed up. Hey, I got to use a baking reference, right? You put them all in a mixing bowl, you got something pretty powerful.
Yep, definitely. Rick Oleshak, thank you so much for joining us on Morning Blend, VP of Marketing for AB Mauri. It's great talking to you again. Watch out. I'm going to send a letter to Sam and to Shari, man.
I don't need that publicity. No. I wish you the best. Thanks for what you do for the show and the community. Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers.